Hello everyone, Psymage here with a recap video discussing year 2 of the channel and how it went. Year 1 featured some great playthroughs, but pretty slow growth overall. Year 2 on the other hand was much more successful, tons more subscribers than I anticipated, and I'm incredibly thankful for that. For anyone who is visiting my channel for the first time, I do commentary and discussion videos as well as one credit clears and playthroughs of classic games as well as the occasional modern game, all done without cheats or continues. I tend to focus on retro games, especially arcade games. This is a bit of a variety channel, which I know the algorithm doesn't like, but I don't mind doing both discussions and quality gameplay. I love variety. But now that the intro is out of the way, let's break down what's been happening over the last year. The biggest thing that has happened to this channel has to be the success of discussion videos. I went from about 53 subscribers at the end of May, I believe, to over 900 subscribers currently. Big improvement, obviously. Starting in the summer of last year though, I started doing more discussion videos on a pretty regular basis, and some of them really took off compared to everything else on my channel. My video about why companies hate you playing old games, in particular, did especially well. It's gotten over 48,000 plays since I published it last August. And I do apologize again for the audio levels on that video, but the algorithm didn't seem to care at all. It just kept pushing and pushing that video compared to everything else on the channel. There were some other discussion videos that were successful, like the one on Classic Game Room, Retro Gaming Elitism, that one did pretty well. My video on the upcoming Analog 3D and Mars FPGA consoles, and the video on Gradient Syndrome. I've also tried to do discussions about particular games, like my video on Doom 3, the recent Downwell commentary video, my Darius Gaiden video, and my review of Mickey Speedway USA on Game Boy Color. These have done okay, but not as well as my other discussions. Despite that, I do have some more of these on the way in the near future because I do enjoy making these kinds of videos. Another thing that I'm thankful for besides the success of discussion videos is the fact that I've been invited to appear on a couple of different channels within the last year. First, I appeared on Shmuptopia's channel to do an episode of Meet the Player, where I discussed my experiences playing shmups as well as the channel. That interview happened last summer and it was uploaded near the end of last year. Next, I made an appearance on Awesome Game Replays recently to discuss my personal best run of Alpine Ski and how the game works. It's always nice to get some recognition in the gaming community for doing these playthroughs, but I also had a great time on both of these shows. I'm open to appearing on more channels for interviews and discussions in the future. Now I want to discuss some of my favorite shmup playthroughs that I've done since the last update video a year ago. The first run that I want to talk about is my one-all of Salamander 2. This is an incredible shmup that could be Konami's best, in fact. The 90s Konami rank system is pretty strong here. It makes the end of the first loop pretty hard, but it still allows newer players to get pretty far into the game. This is probably the most rank heavy shmup that I've cleared so far. It's a shame that Konami has not tried to re-release this game anytime recently. It's definitely a classic. Excellent level design and the weapons are pretty well balanced by shmup standards. I have thought about going for a 2-all of this game, but we'll see if I get to it. Speaking of Konami, I also no-missed the first loop of Gradius 2. This was done months after my no-miss of the original Gradius' first loop, and honestly it's now my favorite Gradius game. I used to think this game was impossible whenever I first played the PC Engine port many years ago off of the Wii Virtual Console. Nowadays, not so much. Even though the Gradient Syndrome is especially bad in a few spots, I feel like the challenge is pretty reasonable overall. Outside of maybe the second half of stage 3, it's not that much harder than the first game. I love having 4 different ship configurations to choose from at the beginning, and the level design has much more variety than the first game and established some tropes that carried on throughout the rest of the series, I think it's an excellent game overall. A game that used to beat me down all the time when I was a casual shmupper was Metal Black. Earlier this year though, I finally took the time to learn it and got the clear. The thing that still blows me away about the game is the atmosphere. This is definitely a masterclass in atmosphere for shmups. The environments and set pieces are incredibly memorable. It does have some flaws though. It is a bit lacking in terms of scoring, as some of it is RNG based, and some of the difficulty later on leans more on RNG than it should, particularly on the last stage. However, those things don't get in the way of this being an enjoyable game and one of my favorites from Taito. The last shmup clear that I want to talk about is my 2-all of Salt Shell. Assault Shell is an indie shmup release in 2020 that definitely deserves more attention. The level design here is really solid, and the break system is cool and takes some inspiration from Crimson Clover. I did my run with B2, which is the alternate version of beta, but the character choices overall are pretty well balanced actually. I highly recommend picking this one up on a Steam sale, or even when it's not on sale. It's only $10 outside of sales. Awesome game whether you play for score or survival. I may come back to this one in order to beat the Void Arrange mode. The last 12 months have also been pretty good in terms of run and gun clears. Last June I got my first arcade side-scrolling run and gun clear when I beat Midnight Wanderers. It's a great game that is stuck in a weird compilation from Capcom called 3 Wonders, which had 2 other games on one PCB back in 1991. The controls are a bit loose, but the game is pretty forgiving because you have to get hit twice in order to die. There are some similarities overall to the Ghosts and Goblins series in terms of gameplay, but this is definitely easier than those games. It's also one of the best looking Capcom arcade games of the early 90s. I also beat Kiki Kakai earlier this year, a game that has been on my radar for a while. This is a classic from Taito and is the first game in the Pocky and Rocky series. I've seen people say this game is hard, but it didn't take me very long after a little bit of practice to be able to get through the first loop on 1 credit. This is a great game that holds up today, and I think it does the overhead run and gun style better than Commando from this time period. The last big run and gun achievement that I had recently was beating Rambo on the Sega Master System, also known as Secret Command or Ashura depending on your region. This game is known for being one of the toughest games on that system, but I managed to clear it after several hours of practice. It's not as easy as I might be making it sound from the time I spent practicing. I just think that my experiences from clearing Commando a while back, as well as Kiki Kakai recently, carried over to this game, as it's another overhead running gun, albeit a slower paced one. The last couple of stages get pretty tough for sure regardless. I wouldn't say this is the best game on the Master System by any means, but for early on in the system's lifespan, it's pretty good. It's much better than Ikari Warriors on NES for example. Also, expect more Master System playthroughs in the future. Roguelikes and Roguelites have been a struggle for me over the years. Usually I have a hard time dealing with the sheer amounts of RNG that many of these games throw at the player. However, earlier this year I managed to do 2 1cc's in these genres, which I haven't been able to do in the past, outside of beating Tower of Guns a long time ago. So the roguelike clear in question was Post Void, which is a roguelike FPS hybrid that I think is one of the coolest shooters made in the last several years. It's like Quake meets Hotline Miami. It's an adrenaline rush from start to finish, and it's pretty cheap even when it's not on sale on Steam, so I highly recommend picking it up. Downwell was the roguelite clear, which I did a month or 2 ago. I made a lengthy video breaking down that game, and I used footage from my 1cc of the game on standard mode. I highly recommend checking out that video, and I'll have a link to it in the description, as well as links to the other videos I've been referencing throughout this video. This is definitely one of the best indie games ever made, and everyone should have it in their Steam library. As far as future plans go, I do want to make some more discussion videos. I am intrigued by that clone Mr. FPGA board that appears to be coming out near the end of the year, so maybe I'll make a video about that once more details emerge. Also, I still have more to say about the current state of gaming. As far as playthroughs go, I recently did a run of Lotus Turbo Challenge 2 on the Amiga, which is one of the hardest racing games of the 16-bit era. I'm not joking about the difficulty. It took me 25 hours to get my first 1cc of the game. Unfortunately, I had forgotten to press record right before, so it took about another 5 hours to get another complete playthrough recorded. I do want to get back to playing shmups. I have slowed down a bit since getting my clear of Choplifter, which isn't exactly a traditional shmup to begin with. However, I do have a couple of games in mind that I want to clear. I don't want to make any promises yet because I may jump to some other games and clear those instead. I would also like to clear another American arcade game at some point. I've cleared Marble Madness and Hard Driving, but I would like to get good at another one. But anyways, what do you think about this channel at this point? Let me know what you think in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe for more content and hit that notification bell as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.